Mr. Steve Crain. I am excited to have you on board today. What's going on in Columbus, Ohio today besides it being hotter than hell?
Yeah, not much for a Monday. It's we have the hot temperatures right now. My studio is not in an air-conditioned office like it looks like you're in right now. I could do that, but the thing is I can't smoke, or I could. It's my house, but I just don't choose to. So we smoke in the garage. We do our podcast in the garage, and today it just happens to be 92 degrees, and I don't know what the humidity is, but it's. Can I curse on this show? I can't remember.
Absolutely, 1,000%. We're red-blooded Americans here. goddammit.
It's fucking hot here and fucking humid, and it's miserable. This is the second shirt. During the setup, I had a blue one of these on. Went inside when I was restarting everything. Put a red one on. I've already got a ring around my collar, so might as well light up. Have a glass of whiskey.
That'll teach you to wear black. Just drink more bourbon.
Yeah, that's gonna help. And being bald, as you know, doesn't help because all it does is just stream down your head.
Oh my God. Well, I kept telling you need to move to Southern California where all these screaming liberal lunatics are, but at least we got the weather, right?
You've got the weather. I'll agree with you on the weather. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we'll just leave that discussion there. Yeah. So for the benefit of the audience, Steve Crain is a man of many talents and passions who I've known for quite a while. I'm honored to call him a friend and an inspiration, and truly just one of those guys who I know is a brother. He's one of those stand-up American guys that bleeds red, white, and blue. And he's also one of those guys that when the shit hits the fan at 2:00 in the morning, I know that he'd answer his phone. So with that, Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So before we get into the shop and the many other things that you're involved in, I always like to start the show off kind of anchored back to what it is that we're doing at ATF. And I know you know about this because you're actually, I believe, if memory serves, well over a decade ago, you're the first person I ever talked to this idea about. So I know that you have a photographic memory, and of course, all of our conversations are so meaningful that I know that you remember every word of them. But
I do remember you bringing this up, and when we talked on the phone, I remember that conversation. Obviously not to a T, but I do remember the concept, and I think it's really amazing that you've gotten this far at this point. Yeah.
So I always like to start off with three of the same questions to everybody. And it's been an interesting streak as to what the answers have been to these. So we'll start off with the first one.
Right.
Do you remember your first tobacco experience?
Tobacco experience would probably be, there's two, and it's not, if I don't know if you mean this in a certain way or if it's that open-ended of a question, but I would say the two would be the fact that my dad smoked probably 2 packs of Benson Hedges a day. So growing up, that was, it was back, I'm sure people do it now, but it was back in the day when, he had an ashtray at every chair, at a chair in the family room. There was a kitchen ashtray. There was a master bath ashtray. There was a, one in his den. There was, he had it. Most of my life growing up, like he actually had the car before me, 79 Lincoln Town Car that had his and her ashtrays up front, and both of them were stuffed with Benson and Hedges. I don't know if he ever emptied that ashtray or either of them, but it was one of those things that I was raised around cigarettes, and I've never smoked cigarettes, but that was when you asked my tobacco side of things, that, and then my grandfather on my mom's side always had a pipe in his mouth. My memory of Grandpa Zyder is mixture number 79 pipe tobacco at all times. Much like my dad with cigarettes, he was with a pipe. So,
and then do you remember the first time you tried tobacco?
I don't have the best memory going back that far, but I would say I think it was actually when I went and visited my brother in college, and I was still in high school, and they were doing, cheaper cigars. And I tried one, never really got into it. And then at some point after graduating, I started smoking cigars occasionally, and then started smoking a little bit more. And, but yeah, I know a lot of people have that first one. I was like, I was on a beach, or I was 12 years old and I smoked my uncle's pipe. Or I don't have one of those stories. I just kind of became part of my everyday life at this point.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. What about your first alcohol experience? Do you remember your first drink?
Communion wine, probably. Blood of Christ. No, I didn't drink until I was 21. I had very
You're a good Ohio boy. See?
Something like that. Good Lutheran boy. My brother, who's 2 years older, still doesn't drink. He never has. And so I started.
So you're a real heathen of the family.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, I'm the one that brings the booze. So I don't really have, again, I know it sounds boring, but it's just, I remember more my experiences with other people with alcohol, and your typical college experiences where I was helping clean up the puke and put people to bed, and, bringing them Gatorade in the morning. After that, I just occasionally drank, and now I probably drink too much, depending on who you ask.
Never. No. Hey, I mean, you seem coherent. You're not slurring, so I don't think you have a problem.
Yeah, watch the end of some of our podcasts.
All right, so last question. Do you remember your first experience with a firearm?
Firearm. So I'm not, I think we talked about it, I'm not the biggest firearm guy.
No.
I'd say I think my first actually shooting it was a handgun. And believe it or not, it was in Southern California, where you're at. I was visiting
on the 405 freeway in self-defense, no doubt.
Yeah, something like that. No, I went to a shooting range. I was visiting a friend out there who now lives back in Ohio. But we went to a shooting range, and his good friend who had stayed with a little bit, the reason he was kind of out there was a gentleman who was in charge of government welding contracts. And so anyways, that's why he was out there doing that. And when we visited, he was a part of the Laotian army, I think, at some point before he came to the States. So we went to the shooting range, and I learned all about it. So that was, I was in my early 20s at that point.
Yeah.
Guns weren't really a big part of my family. And I think I later found out probably why, but we don't really want to get into that. But there was a family history thing that I didn't know about growing up, but we didn't really have firearms in the house. And so I think that's just kind of how people are raised sometimes, that they either do or don't have that stuff. But my family was not one of them. Yeah,
I got you. The reason I asked this is that, of course I'd leave it to you, my good friend, to break the streak that we have going here of memorable experiences, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that's interesting about all three of these things is that, they usually form pretty vivid memories, and even if it isn't memories of the first time, and even guys like you and me that, I mean, smoking cigars certainly isn't safe for a special occasion unless we just consider every day special, which I do.
That's right.
They're usually centered around experiences, right? Like we're getting together with the buddies. We're celebrating, we're mourning, obviously the firearm element isn't always involved in all of those things, but they're almost communal things, right? So, and it's one of the things that I love most about the shop that you run, Tinder Box Easton, that, for a little cigar shop, it punches way, way, way above its weight class. You've got a really unique place there that I've spent countless hours at, and
That's right.
And what always struck me about that place was, I don't want to say that I had smoked cigars plenty before that, but I don't know that I ever fully appreciated cigars until I met you. And I still remember the first time that I came into the shop, I was out there was out there on an assignment, and I was out there for an extended period of time, and kind of feeling a little homesick, missing my wife at the time, and she's still my wife, by the way. She's still with us.
It was at that time you were missing her. I got it.
At that time, I was missing my wife. Yes, thank you. And I walked in, and you were there, and the first question you asked me is, what do you prefer to smoke? Like, what's your favorite cigar? And I didn't see it, so I was kind of wondering, why is this guy asking me what my, I already know you don't have it. And, but you immediately rattled off 5 or 6 different cigars that you said that I would love. If you love this, then you will love these. And then certainly over the time that I spent in the shop, you did that over and over and over again, but the Rolodex was completely different based on whatever the person's answer was. And I just thought, my God, this guy's a walking encyclopedia, and I think I even joked with you, if there was such a thing as a sommelier for cigars, you would be it. But the other thing that impresses me about the shop so much, and this is what I wanted to talk about first with you, is, what do you think it is about cigars that just brings people of all walks of life together, that sit down and have amazing non-confrontational conversations about a whole host of things? Like the range of topics of conversations I've had with people in your shop, everything from, Fortune 500 CEOs, to truck drivers and everything in the middle, and people on the left and people on the right, and everything in between. And, those things never come up in the conversation. We talk about life, we talk about values. Like, why do you think that is? What is it about cigars that do that?
I think you'll probably hear this from more than just me throughout your interviews with people that are into cigars, or they smoke cigars, they enjoy it, they're in that business. I know you just had an interview, with an individual in the cigar industry. It's one of his businesses, but I think it's a pretty common agreement, I think, between everyone, is that you're taking time to sit down. If you're doing it in a shop, you get out of it what you want. You can sit and smoke alone. You can be polite. You can just kind of, pull out your phone, put your headphones in, do whatever. But if you do sit down in the close proximity of someone else, you're smoking cigars, you already have a common bond. You have a common interest, whether it be for just that moment, whether you smoke 6 cigars a day, whether you smoke 1 cigar every other month, or if you're only on, traveling for business, like you were, whatever that is, you actually are slowing down for the moment, because the typical cigar is going to last you around 60 minutes, I'd say. It's all dependent on the size. You can smoke the little cigarillos. You can smoke a Churchill, or now they make, 9x90. Asylum Cigars makes a 9x90. It's ridiculous. It was supposed to be an April Fool's joke, and then people started asking for it. So now they make it. But regardless, it's the interaction, right? So most of the time we're either, on our phones, you're constantly just doing this, and you're purposely or not purposely zoned in right here on your phone, even when you're in the presence of other people. So actually sitting down, it's kind of like a bar, but you're not necessarily, if you're not drinking, you're not going to be inebriated. You're just going to be in the typical state that you're going to be in when you walk in the door. So it's a common bond that you actually have the interest in cigars. So there's already an icebreaker. Yeah. I mean, that's the big part of it. A lot of times when you're just sitting down, it takes effort. If you're sitting down in an airport next to someone waiting on, the only thing that you have in common there is that you're traveling that day. But even that, what do? Where are you headed?
Right.
If you want to start a conversation, a lot of people these days don't give a fuck, and they don't want to do it. They just they don't want to talk to you. Even more so now after the last couple of years. But now it's, if you're back out and about, I feel like if you're sitting with people smoking a cigar, you've committed time at that point. So you're going to be in the proximity of that person, whether it's someone you know or someone you don't know.
Yeah.
You're in it. And they're in it.
Right.
If you're going to be sitting next to someone for 60 minutes, it's not like a waiting room. You know what I mean? Like there's not, like, you might as well talk to someone.
Right. Well, it is something, very, very unique to, in my experience and cigars and I think firearms fall into this. I mean, there's alcoholics from all walk of life, present company included, but, I think, both firearms and cigars, there is this common bond, and I almost wonder if there's more kind of shared common values or, those core foundational values, because I always find, it's hard to find somebody who hates America who smokes cigars, for example. Right. I mean, I'm sure they're out there.
There's Democrats that smoke cigars. But I'm not even saying that. I mean, like there are some people in our shop that are, I would consider, falling more to the left. I'm not saying they hate America. It's just not I think what you're talking about, because even though they smoke cigars, it's
right.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. I can comment on that in a moment.
No. I think that's exactly where we're going. And I mean, to me, and the reason that we're doing this is to tell, I mean, number one, this is what we call an American lifestyle magazine. It's about, really that the American dream is still alive and well, that there's still a lot of people out there, especially in these industries, not the 800-pound gorillas. I mean, we're not interested in corporate America, in these industries, but there's a lot of great inspirational stories of people that are following their passion. And in this case, not just fighting the normal business challenges of competition and economy and all the other things, but, in some cases fighting, a bureau of the American government assigned to regulate and control and, create a whole bunch of unnecessary steps in some cases. But, the focus, my focus with this is not this being a left or a right magazine. It isn't promoting an agenda. And as I tell everybody, I don't subscribe to gang warfare. And I think that, political parties have become weaponized. I know what I believe. And I know that by far and large, the bulk of people that I come across, whether they're friends or just people that I meet for the first time, if I ask them the top 5 things you're willing to lay down your life for, what would they be? And I think regardless of what side of that fence you're on, we have more in common than we don't in the most important things. And I think that the media is just spending a lot of time amplifying the voices of the extreme 10% on each side of the aisle. So I don't feel the need to get into politics or pick a side, because I think that the majority of America is still good and the majority of America still loves America. And we may disagree about some of the little things, but I think we all believe that, we love our families, we love our God, we love this country. We want to do, better than our parents, and we want to equip our kids to do better than us. And we enjoy the freedom and the opportunities that those have died, fighting to protect. The ability to do exactly that, and be rewarded based on how hard we're willing to work. I think we all agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, not like you said, you don't want to get into politics a whole lot. The issue is that at this point it has been polarized. It always has been, but it's even more so now. And it's easy to sensationalize a particular issue. For example, right now, when all the stuff was talking, we're obviously the 2 major things right now, among others, are, abortion and gun control. And I refrain from people that I know on both sides of the thing that I know on social media, whether I'm close friends with them or not, or if just, social media friends. The only thing I want to lash out about is like, these shouldn't be in the same conversation.
Right.
A vaccine and abortion don't need to be in the same conversation. Like, these echo chambers that people are in are absolutely insane when you look at it, because if you are a pro-choice and a pro-gun person, who do I vote for?
Exactly.
Like, that's the problem there. Is like, you can't, like, if I'm talking about like abortion, well, then all of a sudden the memes are all about, or like the sayings, the tweets and all that shit are all about. Then they bring in abortion with gun control and gun control with abortion. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, why is this the same conversation? Talk about this. Then you talk about this. Don't tell me like, oh, if you think this, you then obviously don't think this. I'm like, the fuck I don't. Like, what are you talking about? You know, so I look at this, the ATF, you do have a lot of that stuff. It's like when we talked about in the cigar shop, the one nice thing is that you can actually have a little bit of a breakdown because not everyone is completely like-minded. Because if you were going to toe the far 10% over here and the far 10% over here, well, now all of a sudden you got to like, well, if you believe all that stuff based on what I'm seeing on your candidates, like, why the fuck are you smoking right now? You should not be smoking because they think that's bad and they're trying to go after that and they're trying to eliminate or at least like tax the shit out of this. You should be pissed off of that. But I allow that because I'm like, it isn't that simple. Yeah. You know, you are voting for people that they represent you on these issues, but this issue, they don't. And I think that's what's so nice about when you go back to that initial question is about the cigar shop is that you have already that common interest. And I think people anymore, you look at your neighborhoods, like I'm good friends. I've lived at this street, at this address for 3 years now. And I've got really good friends across the street, 2 different houses, like there's 2 couples. We go to concerts, we hang out, we invite each other to other things. That shit doesn't happen anymore. Because it's like everyone is so concerned with strangers they've never met because that's the greater good that they can't even get their own household in check. They don't care about their neighbors. They don't care about the people that they should, as much as they spend waking hours worrying about fucking tweeting about Ukraine or issues that are global or, you know, strangers that are met in some, you know, random city 18 states away. It's like, why are you spending all your time on that and not the fact, like, why is the divorce rate so high? Because you don't you're so worried about everything else. Like, get your house in check, get yourself in check. Sorry, you got me started. I'm only on my
No, but you know what, man? This is what I miss, and this is exactly why I wanted to have you on the show.
You're gonna enjoy Wednesday when you're on my show.
I can't wait. You know, it's authentic. That's what it is. You know, there's no bullshit,
right?
And it's okay to believe what you believe. And it's okay if I don't completely agree with everything that you just said. I do. But even if I didn't, like, it's still cool. And in fact, I mean, there's been plenty of conversations we've had over the years in the shop that, you know, we didn't completely see eye to eye, but we had enough respect for each other to sit and listen and respect what the other person was saying long enough that, you know, at least half the time when you were talking, you know, I kind of sat back and I thought, you know, I never saw it that way. Yeah, you know what? Like, maybe I think I agree with that, actually. I never considered that perspective.
And why is it? What is the basis of what brought that on? It's the fact that you actually took the time to have a conversation. We are in a day and age where, because of not just social media, but because there's so much anger out there towards each other. If you have that tweak of a different opinion that you think they have, it's the fact that you're not talking at people. That is such a big thing these days. Is that I'm telling you my points, and if you interject, no, you're wrong already, and this is why. These are my talking points. This is my moment, and this could be over like waiting in line for fucking coffee. I mean, I've never met you before, but you look a certain way, or say you're wearing like an NRA hat, right? In the context of this, or once ATF gets big, you got an ATF shirt on, you know what I mean? And they're like, oh, you're one of them. What do you mean? I'm just trying to get a mocha latte, cappuccino, whatever with you, you know, like call that black coffee.
I think I would judge you more for your drink order at Starbucks.
I drink black coffee, but I'm just saying.
All right. I'm just checking, making sure you're still all right, buddy. Nice. So listen, let's shift gears a little bit, because one of the things that I've always admired about you, I like to refer to people like you as kind of a Renaissance man. You've done and tried a lot of things. You're certainly capable of being successful in anything that you tried. and aspire to do. And we'll even talk about some of those things that you've jumped into and turned into wild successes. But you followed your passion. I mean, you know, you're passionate about cigars and lifestyle cigars, and you formed a career out of that. And, I sit here and I shake my head a lot at the current generation who still, lives with their parents at 35 because they just haven't found their passion yet. But you're a guy at an early age, realized what you wanted to do, and you've created a career out of it. Tell me about, both the temptations as well as the drives to do what you've done. Because, I mean, certainly you're a brilliant guy. You're capable of anything. I'm sure you've had countless offers and temptations to go into, just jobs that have big money checks thrown at you. But,
not as many as you'd think, but I appreciate that.
I don't believe it. I know you better than that.
So the issue, what I think, so I was born in 1980, which was a unique, I feel like my brother was born in 78. Being a product of that time, this is a generation, especially when you talk about like millennials and you talk about, whatever the Gen Y and Gen X, Z, all that stuff. We were in that period where, like, even when you looked at it initially, when the millennial thing came up, like 80 to 83 was like this, like no man's land. It was kind of like your parents' kids, but at the same time, it's like you also, at whatever, 8-10 years old, you wanted a Nintendo more than you wanted life. You know what I mean? Like this was like, we were in this transition of where we have gotten to now. So I think there was a sense of loyalty that I think my age bracket has that was even more so before and is not there now. It's starting to come back. So you talk about, like kids that are, in their 20s and they're living at home. It's like, well, now we've actually forced that going forward for the next at least 5-10 years because of the housing market. You know what I mean? You can't do that. I mean, you just can't. I mean, there's no way you can afford unless you live. I mean, we're going to that level of people don't want to talk about, again, politics, but it's like, if you want to go to these extremes of everything and people making what they're making, you're going to have roommates until you're 40. And you might even have like families with 2 or 3 families living in a house. That's just the way it works. We're turning into our own level of immigrants in our own country if you look at it that way. But for me, it was like I had a college job because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was a sociology major. I went to Miami University in Ohio. Great school, great education. I wouldn't do it again based on, I had great experiences, but knowing what college costs now and to do that for a liberal arts degree, even though it framed my mind, which is what I thought college was or university was supposed to do, it just doesn't do it anymore. I mean, job training is necessary. So I was in the moving and storage industry because I was a mover in college, and then I was offered a job in management there when I graduated. So I came back home. My brother was getting married, so I came back home. But I lived at home for 6 months because I was waiting for a buddy to find a job back here. I would have been ready. I started work 6 days after graduating. It wasn't one of those things where it was like, oh, I'm just going to figure myself out. It's like, no, next step was college. Now it's work. Right. I want to be in the moving and storage industry. Not really. It wasn't like really a passion. It's what I knew. So then I moved my way up through that over a decade, from doing operations, claims, fleet management, sales and marketing, dabbled in HR, but everything else I was in charge of at some point. And then I was the GM. And then I didn't see eye to eye with the owners of the company. It was a franchise system. We were doing, $6 million a year operation. We had 30 trucks. It was a great, busy franchise. Yeah. And then I got fired after a conference call because apparently, even though we were hitting all the goals, it wasn't the direction they wanted to go. Let's put it that way.
Corporate America, buddy.
It was a small dose of corporate America, and there's a part of me that I wish now I could go back to that scenario, knowing what I know now. Right. Just like anything, right? With business or relationships and everything else. But then I was actually helping out Brian Joyce, who's a friend of mine. You know Brian. He's the owner of the Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. He's owned it since 99. So we've been there for 22, 23 years. And he was like, hey man, like, this is while I was a GM. I was just making at that time 6 figures for the first time in my life. And he's like, hey, you're up here a lot of Friday nights. Like, do you think you could like help out? And I was like, hell yeah, I want to work in a cigar shop.
Right.
Like I had the time, but at the same time, I'm like, all right, so I was working 6 hours a month there. Started planning events that he hadn't done in a while because I felt like it was something fun to do. And I like going to the events. And then it was in December, about, a few months later, I got let go from my career. And so over the holiday season, he gave me some more hours, and then he approached me. He had actually approached me before, said, hey, I'm looking for someone to kind of help run this and grow it with me. I'm at that point. He's like, I'm just curious what you make. And I said, you can't afford me. Because he couldn't.
Right.
Then all of a sudden life happens, and now he's like, let me look at what I can afford and let's scrape something together. Because I was looking at, Monster, Indeed, all those job sites, and it was like, all right, logistics. I had a non-compete in the moving industry, and it was like, all right. He gave me an offer, and I said, it was a lot less, but I said, all right, let's see what we can grow.
Yeah,
that was my big thing. It's like, all right, you got me now. Let's see what we can grow. And we started off just busting through. It was great. I had fun with it. It was weird not dressing up for work. First time I put on jeans to go to work since I was, 18 or whatever.
Yeah.
It was big. And then since then, we've just kind of plugged away, and we've had a great success. It's one location. We have just under 1,000 square feet. And on a slow day, we have 150 customers.
Yeah.
That's a slow day.
Yeah.
We have a lot of fun. There are slower days. I mean, there are days where we're just like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, what? Where is everyone? But right. It's something that we've been able to do things like the BS Cigar Company, which is a little side thing that everyone says, oh, you should expand it. And I know you just talked to Matt, right? And he'd be the first to tell you how many cigars you have to actually sell to actually make money off of it.
Yeah.
From a pet project to an actual business.
Right.
But we've had fun with that, with the Smoking 10 event. We've done that. And those are all things that when I came in, Brian, I think, had some hopes to do some more than just show up to work and do a retail operation. He wanted it, and he's gone through his ups and downs as anyone does in a career that he's been doing for 20 plus years. They always say, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's absolutely bullshit, because everything becomes a job at some point. Everything becomes a job. You're going to have a bad day. You're not going to want to. I mean, there was a time where it's like, he might kill me for saying this, but he and I were sitting there, and he's like, if I don't have to talk to another customer in my life, I'll be happy. And I said, well, if you're not going to be a hands-off owner, you're going to have to deal with it. And I mean, that's one of those things where it became a job. It became work. It's not, everyone thinks that being a business owner or being like in the cigar business or doing what you're doing, like running a magazine, like these are like glorified things.
Yeah.
It's work.
Well, yeah.
I mean, better than digging ditches, but some people like doing that.
I mean, I talk to young people, some of them even, part of my own extended family, that are at that age, and they're just like, they have a glorified sense of what my life is, number one. Like, oh my God, like, how did you find your passion? Like, you're so lucky to get to do this every day. And I sit there like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I'm glad it looks so glamorous to you, but, I mean, it's herding cats on a normal day.
Yeah.
And like, this isn't, and I remember one of them asked me, we were talking about that, and they assumed, and I said, what, you think I always dreamed of running a media company? Like, you think this is what my passion is? And they looked at me surprised, and they go, well, it's not, then what is? I said, you know what, honestly, in my entire life, I've never given it 30 seconds of fucking thought. You know what what my passion was? My passion was getting the fuck out of my house and making my own money and creating my own life so that I could provide for my own family.
Absolutely.
That's what I was passionate about. And when I was 11 and got my first job and got handed a check, and I looked at the check and I'm like, are you fucking serious? Like, you're giving me money. Okay. Like, right on. So for me, like, that never stopped. And obviously, as time's gone on, the things that I get to do for that money have gotten better and better. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think, find your passion in serving, find your passion in doing a good job for somebody, and working hard, in trying to impact the lives of other people.
I think there's a lot of people that we're already getting past it, but in the last 5 years, it was a really glorified thing of being an entrepreneur, right? It's like, when Instagram was getting big and you saw all these posts and stuff like that, and you find out that people are like literally posting in front of someone else's car or someone else, they're like living the lifestyle of an entrepreneur. And it's like, fuck, that is not the life of an entrepreneur. And you asked, before we started, it's like, haven't you bought out Brian yet? I'm like, I love working for a guy that he did all the hard work. He made all the sacrifices. And at this point in my 40s, it's like, well, if I buy him out, I got to take out a loan. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, how do I afford my house when now I'm in my 40s and I'm the one that's not taking a paycheck? It's like,
right.
That's a young man's game if you don't have investors, or if you don't have that backing where you're like, all right, I'm going to close out my 401k so that I can start this business and gamble again. You know what I mean? There's a lot of different ways to do it, but I think it is a glorified thing. And there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, of being the right-hand man and
absolutely not
making someone else more money and in turn hope that you get that. Now, if you don't get that reciprocation and you have to remind that person, that's fine, because again, they have their own path, you have your path, and hopefully they're all coming together. But it's like, it's got to be a communication, and you have to work for someone or be that person that people work for you, that everyone's working together. And I learned that in my last career was that, yes, the people that when I was the GM, I had 120 employees, and it's like they do work in a sense for you, but you work for them as well.
Right.
And you have to remember there is that dynamic on both sides of it. You can't just, the bosses that are like, oh no, I work for them. It's like, until they don't do what the mission is, and then you have to put on the hat of like, you do work for me. It's not your it's not your mission statement. It's not your goals anymore. Like, it is mine for everyone else involved. Because if you fuck it up, then we're all screwed.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you've done a great job there, and I'm sure, together with Brian, in doing a lot of things that, that most shops don't do, so you've mentioned a few of them. I remember actually coincidentally when I was out there, I believe, and I was out there for an extended period of time solo on a project. And I believe that was when you had the first Smoking 10 event.
Yes.
And so tell me about what led to the Smoking 10 event and what it's become, other than, the being invaded there in your garage.
The Smoking 10 event is a lot of shops, bigger shops will put on, or collaboration shops will put on a multi-vendor event. And a lot of industries, people do that. But in the cigar industry, it's tough because, again, depending on how big you are, there's some big boys, that can do it because they have multiple locations. They are multi-million dollar operations. They spend a shit ton. So the companies are like, yeah, what do you need? We'll do it, right? Where we came in the first time we did it, our neighbor is an Irish pub. It's called Fido Irish Pub and Restaurant. So if you guys, depending on where you're at, they've got several locations, but Fido is like a second home. It's amazing that where we're at, Easton Town Center is one of the first outdoor malls in the country. It was a concept that has succeeded tremendously.
It's amazing.
And yeah, it is. It's like its own little town. We just had Bobby Newman in town from JC Newman. First time he was there. And Dan Liebold, the rep for Fuente Cigar and JC Newman, was bringing him into the area. And he's like, is this like a suburb? And this is a guy, generational. JC Newman Cigar Company is huge. Right. Huge. And so he's coming in town for the first time. And Dan's like, no, this is a mall. He's like, he couldn't believe it. Yeah. And then he comes in and all of a sudden, like, there's this foot traffic on a weekday at our store. And he's like, what is, like a lot of people the first time, like, what is going on here? Fido Irish Pub is a great neighbor of ours, good friends. You've spent many of days and nights on the patio, drinking whiskey, smoking cigars. And so they do a St. Patrick's Day party, Irish Pub. They do a St. Patrick's Day party every year. When I started with Brian, we had started talking about it. He had kind of the idea, wouldn't it be nice type of a thing. My connections between Fido and now with Tinder Box, I was able to help out Brian and Fido use their tent for a night they weren't using it. And we started the first time. We had, I think, 10 companies. We had about probably 130 people show up the first time. We sold tickets. First, it was like you buy it for $75, you get 10 cigars. Buy it for whatever it was, $50, you get 5 cigars. And it was a 4-hour event at night. It was cool. The owner of the pub came over to me and was like, we gotta do this every year now. And so then we started planning it. It was a all-day event, and it's expanded every year. We do 10 to 15 different companies. Now we have VIP tickets that are, over $200. We have general admission that's $150, and we've peaked at 300 guests, and then now we're trying to float between 225 and 250 just for exclusivity. And we have a good time. I mean, it's a lot of fun. The pub puts on, they have their own bar, obviously, so that helps out, and they're able to do the cash bar for us. There's usually some drink tickets. The buffet is off the charts. Anyone in the cigar industry that has heard of our event has probably heard that the food is better than any other cigar event. Eric Espinosa is a good friend of mine. Actually does our BS Silver, which I'm not smoking right now, but the BS Silver is a blend through Espinosa Cigars, and he's just every year, I remember I went out and saw him at Cigar Fest after he had been to the Smoking Tent event. First thing out of his mouth was, what's up, bro? He's a bro guy. He's Miami, right? Cuban. He says, what's up, bro? He's like, food here is shit. It's nothing like your guys's. I mean, it's like one of those things, like you don't know what you're going to be known for. Right. A cigar event with like lamb and crab cakes and like a amazing chili and like all this stuff. Like it's amazing what you find out, but it's a fun event that we've gone way above. You say like the shop is punching above our weight class. That event, we hear from everyone in the industry. It's, we have 6 employees, and we run an event that houses 10 to 15 different vendors and has, anywhere between 200 and 300 people to attend. And we have a regular staff of 6 people, including myself and Brian, the owner. And
the shop stays open during the event.
And the shop stays open.
So somebody's got to man the shop during
That's right. Too. We have former employees come back. We have people that are close to us that aren't even cigar smokers that volunteer to help out. But I mean, we really run that event with Fido's help with a total of less than 20 people.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And my only complaint about it, Steve, is you hold it the day before my freaking wife's birthday.
We had someone come in, if you know the name Ray Cheshire. Do you remember that name?
Yeah, of course.
Ray Cheshire lives in Vietnam now, and he literally was planning a trip to the U.S. for the first time in several years. He and his wife, Jane, attended the event this March, after we had not been doing it for 3 years because of COVID and all that bullshit. So I'm just saying, be nice to get away for your wife's birthday and just, plan a trip and, maybe hit a couple spots, Columbus being one of them. We have a new Gucci store opening. I don't know if she likes Gucci. I don't know. But then you get to party all day.
I go to my wife and I say, baby, I've planned this special surprise birthday trip for us for your birthday.
Correct.
And then just let it hang there so that mentally she can start imagining all the exotic.
I will get. Go to. What's your wife's name?
Shelly.
Shelly, that's right. I will get about 300 people singing "Happy Birthday" to Shelly on St. Patrick's Day weekend in a tent we throw a party.
In a tent full of cigar smoke.
I mean, just saying.
Which really,
you're gonna get 300 people that sing "Happy Birthday." I don't think
on a normal day. Yeah, I like it. I think I'm going to execute that plan. So you mentioned, when we were talking about the 10 event and you actually held it up on the table, because apparently you don't have enough to do between all the different things that you do. Right. You went off and created your own cigar. So you and Brian together collaborated. Tell me about what led to that.
So Brian had done a lot of cigar shops will do like a house brand, and a lot of cigar shops will, not going to talk bad about it, but I mean, do like a cheap, like a bundled cigar or whatever, you know what I mean? Like they get it for cheap and they charge a couple extra bucks so they make some money off of it. And that's where they look at it. Brian had worked with a company called Tropical Cigars, which then turned into Casa Fernandez, which now has turned into Aganorsa Leaf, before I had been there. And he had done a El Toro of Easton cigar, what he thought he wanted and all that stuff. He tried the whole house brand before, and it just didn't really take off. He didn't have the time to really, do much with it. So when I came on, we started coming up with the idea again to try it again. And there was a whole joke at the time that, we'd have regulars come in and people would just be like, just regulars, it's like, how you doing? Or like whatever the question is, and go fuck yourself was the answer. And so at some point we started talking about doing it, and I said, I'd love to do the GFY cigar. This is how, like, in my mind, this has transpired. And then I was like, all right, so let's do this. We could do like a really elegant band and say like it was the Grand Flor de la Yankee. So you get a little American tie in there, but you have the flower of the Yankee, right? Great.
I like it.
And then on the band, it would just say GFY. So it'd be like an inside joke. What are you smoking? GFY.
Yeah. Right.
He took it in a better direction and in fun spirits thought maybe we could call it the BS, Brian and Steve. But obviously a lot of people think it stands for bullshit. So we expanded on that idea. We went back originally to Casa Fernandez at the time. Since then, we've parted ways, but we worked with them on coming up with a blend with some of their best tobaccos, and worked with an actual good farm and company as opposed to just going with a cookie cutter type of a blend. Right. This was something this is what we want, and we went back and forth, and we went with that. Then we went down to Miami, and at that time we were doing a line extension with the BS Gold, which is what I'm smoking now. And we met with Eric Espinosa because he had been up in Columbus for one of our events prior to that. And he heard we were coming down. He said, let me take a crack at what you're trying to do, if you don't mind. I don't want to step on any toes. So we had a great trip down to Miami, in and out, went to Casa Fernandez, went to Eric Espinosa, which I can't speak highly enough about either of them, but especially Eric and his family. You want to talk about hospitality. I mean, the whole family was there. They catered in some of their favorite Cuban food from a local restaurant. Your glass was never even this empty.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And that's what transpired into the BS Silver, which is a pepper bomb, all Nicaraguan tobacco. We worked with a friend of ours, Larry Schumann, on the graphics of it all. We did legit bands. This stands up to any other cigar out there.
Yeah.
The B and the S is on there as well. You have a combination of our family crests, which is, you got a cross from his, a Celtic cross, and then you got a Crain, which is my last name, which, looking into my history, that's going to be on there. And then you have two things: Spirit for his Native American heritage that he's got a hint of, and then you have Focus on the band, which is one of my mantras, as you know, Pat.
I do.
Yeah. And then you have some Liberty coins. We put some American Liberty coins on the bottom as opposed to normal coins that you see on the cigar bands. And and then on a lot of our stuff, it says Columbus inspired. So it's been a fun project.
I mean, the best part of it is it's a great cigar. Right.
We've actually made it better, in my opinion. Love the guys at Casa Fernandez, now Aganorsa Leaf. But they kind of parted ways with some smaller projects. So now the gold is actually made by Plasencia, which is a family that goes back all the way to Cuba. They have factories in Honduras and Nicaragua. They make cigars for other companies, and they also make some cigars for themselves. Now they make our BS Gold out of the Nicaraguan factory.
And what have you, it's interesting, right? I mean, your entire career has been based on, smoking and profiling and kind of inventorying other people's cigars.
Yeah.
A case in point was, my first visit in there and everybody's first visit, because that's just you're a service-minded person, right? But when you go to create your own cigar, and Matt Booth and I actually just spent quite a bit of time talking about this same thing.
You would know even better, obviously.
How do you go about creating your own cigar? Like, do you just create your personal favorite thing to smoke, or do you keep in mind what will sell the most and try to find that middle ground, or what?
I think that there's a couple ways to do it, and I don't know what Matt. I got to listen to what I got to read that article with Matt. Is the magazine, the first one with him, is it out?
July 4th.
July 4th. All right, that's something to look forward to here. But I've met Matt before, and just one of the sharpest individual I've ever met, and now I know you know that. But when it comes down to it, I think there's two sides of it. I think you need to like it. If your name's on it, you need to stand by it. But it is what's going to sell. I mean, unless you're independently wealthy, which some of these guys are, based on other businesses, they can do whatever the hell they want. You know what I mean? But for us, with it being our shop's bestseller, this is something that the first one, BS Gold, even when we switched to Plasencia, it was the fact that this is a mild smokers can smoke it, full body smokers can smoke it. It's not overpowering for most, and it's not too light for most. So this is something that it's got a lot of flavor. The Gold does. The second one, the BS Silver, even Eric Espinosa himself, when he smokes it, and Hector, who's the head blender / operations guy, he's fantastic. They always smoke someone when they come in, for the batch or whatever. And when Eric smokes it, he's just like, fuck, man, this is pepper bomb, man. Like, even he, who makes, he makes several, like a huge portfolio, been in the industry for years. Right. And he even smokes the BS Silver. He's like, fuck, man, this is a pepper bomb, man. I don't know. I can't smoke this every day. That's okay. The BS Gold is our big, like everyday seller. The BS Silver, if you like it, you fucking love it. And if you're like, you smoking, you're like, well, I was sneezing constantly. I was retrohaling, and I was just like, just this black pepper was coming through. I was like, yeah, that's what's supposed to do. Yeah. So we make it because we like it, and we think that it's got some sellability. And I think it's something that the BS Gold is really, if you're going to do it, if you're going to do it for a business, you need people to like it. Sure. And I think that if you're that type of person, that business person, that you're like, people need to like what I like, then you're not going to succeed. You just aren't. You can sleep well at night. You've done it the way you want to do it, but I mean, you're going to sleep well at night until you need to find another job or another career. I mean, this is just the way it works. It reminds me of, you ever seen Joe Dirt? Yeah. You remember that scene where he comes up on the fireworks stand, and I forget the character's name in there, but all he does is sell the black snakes and sparklers, because that's all he likes. Yeah. Can't do that. Not what you like, it's what the consumer likes. Right. So I obviously anything like that, choosing a blend for the cigar that carries your name for the first time, it's got to be a little bit overwhelming. And certainly now, it's been out for several years. Yeah. What have you learned through the process, and kind of what's next? There's silver and gold, is the platinum, 10-year celebration coming out, or what? We are passively working on a third blend. Again, being small guys, and it's really at the shop, and then we have a few other shops that carry it, and we do get orders for it. We'd like to get more. It's a cash flow issue, man. When you're a smaller shop, I mean, Matt Booth is on a different level, not to keep bringing him up to it, but it is when you're working with different companies, when they're producing cigars for themselves and other companies, they can't just like push you ahead of everyone. Right. So you need to have like these regular orders, and it may not seem like a whole lot, but it's like when you're ordering, 6,000 cigars at a time, right. that's small compared to the people that are ordering 60,000 cigars at a time. So right. It's all a pecking order, right? So what we learned was with Aganorsa leaf now, And again, all respect to them, we were getting inconsistencies on the golds. We get one order in and it's like, oh, this is beautiful. And we get another order in and like all of a sudden they're cracking, they're blowing up, they're plugged, whatever. And it's like, we're giving feedback. And eventually we became the problem child. We're just this small, buyer for them.
Right.
And we're blowing up their phone and saying, hey man, like what's going on? This isn't right. And we had all these issues until we parted ways with them. I'm not going to tell you the details out of respect for them, but it's like we parted ways with them. And now that we're working with Plasencia, consistency is key. Brand management is so big on consistency. If your name's on it or whatever it is, it's kind of like, you doing this podcast, you doing the publication. One of the big things with the Bourbon and BS podcast, there's things that I'm very consistent on. And one of the reasons I feel like it doesn't really blow up because there's things I'm not as consistent on because it's a third or fifth project that I'm working on that I still have to do on a regular basis. So I get it done. We stream it. We have the video out there and it's like, I'll have people hit me up. It's like, hey, I haven't seen an audio, podcast show up in a couple of weeks. And I'm like, I lost time. I have no time for it. I have to go back and edit it. You know what I mean? It's right. There's those transitions of how do I get it to be a consistent product and at the same time not have to rely on other people, but at some point you have to rely on other people.
Right.
And with the BS Cigar, it was a big thing is the people we were relying on weren't giving us the consistency and therefore now our name is on it and all it's like right now with any other company in this industry or others, there was a period where if you didn't have a product, they thought you as a retailer just couldn't afford it. You didn't order it, all that stuff. And all you're doing is blaming the other guy. Be like, yeah, it's on back order.
Right.
We're in a day and age right now where it's like, yeah, it's on back order. And they look back at you and like, what else is, everything's on back order.
Exactly.
So now it's been justified, but there's a period there where you talk about consistency, you talk about not getting a product, you have your name on it. You even want it to be more consistent because now people are looking you in the eye or you back that. And I feel like we've learned the biggest lesson in the fact that when someone lights up a BS cigar or BS gold or silver, they get what they expect. Or even better, they're blown away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And you said now, did I hear you correctly that it's the best-selling cigar in the shop?
The BS Gold is our best-selling SKU.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a great time with it. We have another shop in town that carries it, and we just aren't structured to a point where we are going to make it a regional or national thing. If it grew organically, that would be a lot of fun. But again, you don't want to grow too fast because then you lose the consistency. You're that boutique brand where it's like, they order whatever, 10 boxes. And the next time they order, like, hey, it's selling great. And you're like, well, it's going to be 6 months.
Right.
And then you lose. So.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's, I think there's a lot of great lessons. It's one of the things I've admired about you in the shop too, is I think it's a very American thing, quite frankly, that we're not known for being patient, right? We're the superpower of the world. I mean, we're the strongest, we're the richest, we do a lot of great things all over the world, but patience isn't our strong suit. And, when you have societies and civilization countries like, China and Russia and whatnot that, date back thousands of years, and we're telling them what to do with our, 260 some years. It's interesting. And I think that's embedded in our culture, but you guys have always been very disciplined and very patient and you play the long game very, very well.
Pat, there was a time when I started with Brian and this is a lot like, so for anyone listening, it's something that we're not like a big, multi-billion-dollar company. We're not like, this is that American side of it. This is the grassroots. This is the Main Street. It's bigger than that, but like Main Street kind of America, right? It's that whole thing where when you have competitors open up, that was a big thing when I came into this business with Brian, and there were other shops opening up and where it was like this divide in the community that was the Cigar Smokers of Columbus, and it's since grown. And one of the things that he and I talked about was that we need to just keep doing what we were doing before, grow on that, do more, right? Like learn from it, use best practices. But it was like, don't worry about it. We'll get new customers.
Yeah.
If someone wants to go to another shop,
I think a lot of people panic in those situations, don't you?
They do. But it's like, that's that consistency side of it.
Right.
Is that is, you talk about the people not being patient. That was we're really, really hopefully bouncing back from it. And I am worried about it, but it's that instant gratification. Right. That's a big thing right now, with everything, everything being at your fingertips. But in business, you start up, there is that whole thing where it's like, you're going to have to, if you do well, maybe 5 years, you'll start making money. It's maybe if you're really good or you hit it, like 3 years. It's not like you're going to open up a shop and start selling cigars. You're not going to start selling magazines just because you started doing it.
Nope.
And you have to do things your way in a sense that there is consistency so that people know what they're getting. People buy from people they like, and they have to like you. That's the big thing with our shop, with what you do with this magazine, is that you have a face behind it. You have an identity, whatever it is, with the thing you're trying to put out in the world. If you want people to buy from you, it's got to be consistent. They got to know what they're getting. And at first, they don't know what they're getting.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just gotten to be such a complicated landscape now because, to start any business, any venture, anything, right? It is such a noisy environment, right? Like everybody and everything is screaming every second, right? Like if I see a post in my Facebook feed and I go back 10 minutes later, I can't even find it because there's been so much more stuff that's come through in the past 10 minutes that it's just like gone forever. Or maybe that's my old age speaking to my technology aptitude. But the same thing with restaurants or bars or cigar shops or anything. It's like, oh, this is the newest thing. But then the second chapter of that challenge is if you can find a way to cut through all the noise and get access to a population to be able to present your case. Like, here's what makes us special. Please come check us out. And they check you out. Now you're in the second chapter of the challenge, which is the complete opposite. How do you play the long game in an environment where new is the only thing that matters, right?
New is good for the first buy. You're absolutely right? So you go back to the restaurant thing. You go into a restaurant. Food's good, right? Food's fucking amazing, right? But service sucks. You gonna go back?
No.
Probably not. Food's good at the other place, and you felt like you needed to adopt that server because he or she was just such a sweetheart, and you're asking them questions because you're just like you feel it, right? The bartender's like cool. You see them behind there, and they're like, the server suggests something. The tobacconist suggests something and has a conversation with you.
Right.
Or if you don't want to talk to them, they respect that and they mirror that. They learn all this stuff. People buy from people they like.
Right.
What you're doing with this, you're behind this, correct? If I'm not mistaken, we talked about this years ago. You're sitting here doing a podcast with some fucking guy in Columbus, Ohio on a cul-de-sac in his garage. And the fact is that you're going to keep doing this. You're not just going to sit back and be like, I've got people to do this. I've got a team. I'm going to be behind the scenes. They're going to like the product. No, now they're going to hear from you. Right. They're going to hear from your team. They're going to hear from this. Now it's not just that editor in chief, thing that no one reads. Some people do. I'm not going to offend anyone. I know it's worthwhile, but they have that, from the editor type thing. I think it's valuable if I know who you are. When I get this month's or this, quarterly ATF, I'm going to open it up and I'm going to be like, what are Pat saying this week?
Right.
And then I might message you because at the bottom of it, you have your Instagram handle, you have your email, you have all that stuff. I mean, it's simpler than people think, in my opinion. It's literally
I
putting
agree
yourself
with you
out
actually, because Yeah, I mean, I think everything has become such a commodity, and it's become such a race to the bottom that it's opened up this opportunity that if you just give a shit, you're now different, and people are willing to pay more and take more time and go more out of their way for that experience, because I think it's just part of the human condition that we want to be respected. We want to feel special. We want to, do business with people that we like.
Yeah.
And just everything's become, fucking, not that there's anything wrong with Walmart. I mean, they're, or Amazon or whatever, I mean, fine. But, they
Walmart. Have. You bring up Walmart. You're absolutely right. From a core, Walmart is Walmart, right? But if you go into your local Walmart and you have a bad experience, fuck that place. I'm going to go to Meijer. I'm going to go to whatever's local to you, right? I'm going to go to another superstore.
Right.
And I'll find whatever it is, and it'll be around the same price. But if I go into a Walmart near me and even the greeter at the door is memorable,
right?
The cashier is memorable. I'm walking in an aisle and someone walks up and be like, hey, what are you looking for? And you tell them, you're like, have you had this? Yeah. Now you're sitting there, you're like, I'm at a Walmart and people care about what I'm doing here. You're going to go back.
Yeah.
Like even at the large level, and what's happening, I think right now, we've gone down a tangent, haven't we? What's happening right now is that I think it's more about the leadership, whether it be middle management, lower management, whatever it is. It has to trickle down to the point that the people on the floor, when I have that experience with them, they don't care about what I'm buying. They're not getting commission. They're getting their hourly wage, whatever it is. But if they hate their job, it's not necessarily, it could be things outside of work. It could be the people above them. But there is this innate thing that I think that we have lost big time in this country, especially, that you represent the company that you're working for.
Yes.
Whether you're the owner, whether you're the manager, the CEO, the frontline staff, you're the janitor, you represent that, and you should take pride in that. So when I have a friend that he's in retirement, right? He works 3 days a week, whatever, at Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever whatever one it is. I'm not going to say which, but it's like one of the big hardware stores.
Right.
And he's retired. He knows his shit, all that stuff. He's saying they're getting hired in with very little training, and they give the vest or whatever else, and they just start floating the floor. As someone that's not really a home remedy guy, if I'm going to go in there, like I remember walking into again, Home Depot or Lowe's or one of the big boys or whatever, and I was looking for my toilet handle broke, right? So it breaks. So I go into this big fucking warehouse. All I need is a toilet handle with an universal. Should be simple, right? So I'm walking up. I can't find anyone, so I'm walking up and down the aisle. I'm not a contractor, so I've been there, but I don't know where everything is. Find the toilet section. I'm walking up and down the toilet section. I'm like, oh, these are just toilets. I don't need a toilet. I just need an arm. I need a handle. So I'm walking up and down. I look at this whole thing. No one around. And this is why, because what this person's telling me is they're still doing this, is that they just hire people and they don't train them. There's no leadership. They're just like, and people are like, oh, people don't want to work. You don't want to fucking train them.
Right.
So I'm looking up and down. And I finally see, hey, I'm looking for a toilet handle. I'm literally doing this. People that are on the audio, I'm like they don't know what a toilet. They never used a toilet before. I'm like literally like, the thing that when you flush it. Yeah. You took a piss, you took a shit. Like I need to like get it down into my plumbing. Right. I'm like over explaining this thing, and they're like, let me find Bob. I'm like,
Bob?
Who's
you
Bob?
Know what I'm talking about?
I don't know where they're at. Is what this person told me. It was in like 2 aisles down, not near the toilets or anything. And it's like, well, not only is this poorly organized, but now there's no training. And I think that's a big part of it. There was no identity with what you're doing with your waking hours. You go into work and you're just like, well, I'm just here. It's whatever, 6:30. I get off at 4:30. It's only noon. God.
Right.
and they're just like avoiding people at this point. Like no one talked to me because I don't know what I'm doing.
Please don't ask me a question that I don't know the answer to.
It's a joke.
So, this is actually like a perfect segue into, what we're going to wrap up with is your Bourbon and BS podcast. So, these are, this is exactly the conversation that I hoped we would have, which is
that right?
Aimless and,
thank you.
And all over the place, and yet deeply meaningful and revealing of character and values and things that used to happen in America all the time, right? Yep. Guys literally used to hang out in the bar or the barber shop and have these kind of conversations. And I think it made them better men because we had the opportunity to bounce these thoughts off people and learn from each other and everything. And now, not only does nobody want to learn, nobody even wants to hear anybody else's opinion because it's going to be a fight. Yeah. So you started the Bourbon and BS Podcast, which it's almost like you named the cigar BS just so that you could have a podcast named BS.
So,
So tell me about it.
So the Bourbon and BS Podcast is something that, again, much like the BS Cigars, it's something that we do with very modest goals. If it ever takes off, great, and we can put more effort into it. But the biggest thing is about putting out that consistent product we're talking about. I had a buddy, Jake Sanders, who was much younger than me, and he was trying to find his way, and he was working different jobs. And one of those ended up being part-time at the Tinder Box at Easton. And he was working for another company who's local but very successful in the fitness industry. And one of the things that he had helped work on was the videography of a podcast. And so he wanted to do his own. So one of those things that, he's like, I want to do and he was big into bourbon, right? Big, like everyone is now.
Right.
Everyone's into it. And there's a million podcasts, a million YouTube channels about reviewing bourbon.
Right.
And everyone's an expert, right? As you know. So he's like, I want to do a bourbon and cigar podcast where we review bourbon and cigars. And I said, oh, that'd be fun. What are you thinking? And he's like, yeah, we do it like weekly, blah, blah, blah. And it was like an infancy of an idea. And I said, well, I'm listening to a lot of podcasts that I really enjoy that have a little bit more of the life stuff. You know what I mean? It's more of entrepreneurship. It's relationship stuff. It's basically what you get at the end of once you've talked about what were you talking about, like why when you go into a cigar shop, why do you how do we talk to these individuals? And we said, you're in it. So you've already talked about, hey, what are you smoking? What do you think of it? I've had that. I haven't had that. And then you get through the next topic of whatever it might be. If you are at a cigar bar, and what are you drinking? You're like, I'm drinking right now Russell's Reserve. Yeah, I've had. That's great. Where do you go from there? Especially if you're hanging out with your friends, your boys, if you have couples over at your house, you try to steer clear of politics, like we've talked about.
Right.
You're drinking in a bar. You're fixing the world. Like someone has something going on and they want to talk about it, but they don't want to talk about it. But eventually it comes out at the end of the night. So I told Jake, I said, I'll do it, but I'm not going to do another just bourbon and cigar podcast. I want to have a second part, and it's going to be a life thing. Yeah. And for a while there, he and I kind of battled back and forth because, he was in his early 20s, didn't have a whole lot of life experience. So he didn't know what to do with it. I had been several positions in a career, got fired, married and divorced, bought a house, moved out of the house after the divorce. I'm not saying I'm the most well-traveled man, but it was like one of those things. I'm like, again, sociology degree behind that. I'm like, I can talk a bit about some of this stuff and you can contribute. And then we have guests every week.
Right.
He's since left town. He's the general manager at Burn by Rocky Patel in Indianapolis, which is their newest location. So he has basically catapulted from part-time at a Columbus shop and doing a podcast and making connections. And now he's the GM of a big time cigar bar.
That's
so
awesome.
these are the things that the community can bring to you. And so I've continued that, and we've really harnessed a lot of that. And we stream live on Facebook every week, which they continue to, as you probably know, change their algorithms and who sees it, who gets notified. We went from 3,000 to 5,000 views a week overnight to pushing 1,000. And we're still struggling to get that. We have a YouTube channel that we don't really push. We have it on the audio, as I mentioned, that I try to keep updated. But the big thing about the podcast is that we review a cigar and a whiskey every week, and then we try to have a guest, whether it be a whiskey guest. You're our guest this week coming up. So Wednesday night around 7:30 Eastern time. Pat, you're going to be on here on the Bourbon and BS Podcast. It's truly what we're doing. You talk about a little bit of structure on the cigar and the whiskey. We review it, we drink it, we smoke it, we talk about it, what we know about that part of it. If we have a cigar guest, Eric, like I said, Eric Espinosa's been on it. We've had some distilleries on there. We have these people that are experts. So it's more cigar heavy or it's more bourbon heavy. And we learn a lot about that history. And then we review it. We're just like, oh, it's great. That's like an hour. And then we come up with somehow a life topic every week. This week it'll be more of an interview with you, the ATF podcast. And we've had just some great conversations where all we really hope for, I know it's really a modest goal, is that someone, whether they are sitting here in the garage, like I've everywhere from like 0 people to over 10 people sitting here live in my garage, depending on who's on and who's in town. And we have people in the audience. We stream it live, so it's interactive. Right. We have people actually commenting as we're doing this. We try to bring that conversation into it. It's very community-based. And when we get to the second part of it, it's that life topic, and it's different every week. And it's been a very successful podcast once people listen to it.
Right.
That's the fun part about it, is that we'll have people either message or they'll come into the shop in Columbus, Ohio, and like, yeah, I listen to your podcast all the time. I'm like, I've never seen this person before in my life.
That's amazing.
That's the fun part about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're very raw. It is live. Like, you're going to go back and edit this. I break it up, but I don't take out the uhs, the ums, I edited one time. It's because it was a friend of mine who's a very successful business person. And we got to this point in part 2, and it got to that drunken conversation where it was like,
oh no.
No. I know what you're saying, but what I'm saying is, and this went for like 10 minutes, and I'm like, I'm gonna cut that off.
Yeah, save him from himself. See see, you're a good man.
Well, I was also drunk. I was the guy who was going back and forth with, and I listened to it the next day.
Oh God. You know what? This is exactly the reason why I want to have you on. Yeah, I mean, number one, I've always, from the first time I met you, I held you in very, very high regard. I respect the hell out of, not just what you've done, but the way you live your life and the person that you are. I mean,
appreciate that.
You're a true, good-hearted American, and that isn't. It's too bad that, you immediately start thinking politics when somebody makes a statement like that. But that's what we should all be, right? Is serving something more than ourselves. And I think that it's something that we have in common. Is we're both just servant personalities. Like, we actually get pleasure from serving others and making their lives better. Right? So.
Yeah.
I've never been that guy that's like, oh, honey, see you next week. I'm going off with the boys. Because honestly, like, I feel guilty, right? Like, my job is to serve my family, and when I signed up to do these things. So, you are always that, and it's evident from everything that you do, that you're a servant. And you want to improve the things around you, and that's what I love. You mentioned something, and I've thought about it ever since you said it. Is you said, oh, we're just a little shop, and that there's a lot of bigger shops, and a lot of these bigger shops do a lot of bigger things and everything else. And it's like I told you before we started taping, is Certainly, this publication, like the many other publications that we do, we always have the opportunity of who we choose to work with. And there's always those 800-pound gorillas, with huge corporate departments and huge corporate budgets, that also try to use all that these are my words, to buy your soul, to get you to compromise your own mission and your own values in exchange for the check they're going to give you. And we've always vowed, no, we're going to focus on the values and the people that are actually serving their environment and serving their customers and their clients. And you guys do that. And you are the reason why we're doing this magazine is, this is an American lifestyle magazine, and it's stories about the American dream. And you guys are living it. So, my hat's off to you guys. I think the world of you and what you guys are doing. And certainly we're going to do everything that we can to leverage our audience, to push them your way, to help more of your American dreams come true, because you guys are doing it right. You're the good guys, and the good guys always win in America.
Appreciate that. Vice versa. Absolutely. As you know.
So, I encourage everybody to, certainly book a trip to Columbus, Ohio, right around March 17th. And take advantage of truly one of the best times you can spend anywhere, surrounded by truly the best people in America. But stop by the shop, check out the BS Cigar line, which is amazing, and especially sign up and listen to Steve and his gang talk about the meaningful things of life. I guarantee you're going to walk away a better person, having shared some time with these guys. And what I love about the podcast is that, it kind of relieves some of that homesickness of getting to hang out with you guys on a regular basis in the shop. So
we have a good community there.
Yeah.
If I could, if for those that are on Facebook, or YouTube, we're going to have Pat on this Wednesday night, right? So it's going to be around 7:45 p.m. Eastern time. And there's a good opportunity that if you follow, if I could plug the Bourbon and BS podcast and also the Bourbon and BS community page, which we're about, not huge, but it's like 1,500 members strong plus. And it's like an extension of that. But there's been a lot of people that, and I'm not even kidding, they don't necessarily, not all the members smoke cigars. They don't all drink bourbon. It's truly a community that's an extension off of, I think, both part one and part two of the podcast. And I think that's where, Pat, you and I have connected over the years, is that it's not always about what our first interaction was, which is what is the cigar you're smoking? What do you like? What do you don't like? It's the same thing with the drinks, like you look at the ATF thing. You can disagree about your firearms too. What you think is the best, handgun. What do you think the best, for this purpose is. What the best bourbon is. If you don't even like whiskey, you don't really even smoke cigars. There's value to having those conversations with people, and I think that's really what opens it up. And I think you're going to really enjoy hearing our podcast with you on it here this Wednesday.
I can't wait. Well, listen, I appreciate it, brother. You have any words of wisdom in closing, other than we should all focus more?
I agree with you that you should do what you love, and it doesn't necessarily mean that with your work that, if all you do is smoke cigars, you need to be in the cigar industry. Sometimes you need to be able to do a job that can afford your hobby or your lifestyle, right? So there is something with that, but you have to have pride in that. And I think that whatever you do with your waking hours, I hope that everyone has pride in that. And like I said, even if you do what you love, it's going to become a job at some point. I mean, that's a summary that I think that is people jump ship, whether it be if they're working a job they used to love and all of a sudden it's not becoming that. We'll figure out what are the reasons why it's not becoming that. Is it the job or is it something else? I think that we talk about on our podcast a lot is like relationships as well. If you have a good relationship, you're with someone, you have a friend that is like seeing eye to eye with you all the time, and you feel like this is like your best friendship, you married your best friend, all that stuff. Give it time. It will also become a job. You will learn from your mistakes, and sometimes you do have to step away and have to take a different path. But as long as you continue to learn, you keep opening yourself up to that, I think that is something that you'll create tremendous value for yourself and others if you do that in an honest way and not a selfish way.
I love it. I love it. All right, brother. Well, listen, I appreciate it. I think you've probably lost 15 pounds just during the course of this.
For those of you, I'm not like sweating because I'm like sitting here like drunk.
It's because you're so nervous about this call, I'm sure.
I'm not nervous at all. It's still reading 90 degrees here.
Good Lord.
At 7 p.m.
All right, brother. Well, listen, I appreciate you. I encourage everybody to check it out. Check out the podcast and all the other great things Steve and Brian are doing in Columbus, Ohio. And thanks for being a good American and just all around good guy.
We're actually going to grill steaks tonight, just so you know.
God bless it. I've seen some posts. Those aren't steaks, man. Those are half cows that you throw on that.
That's
grill.
right.
Only in America. All right, buddy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.